Well, my name is Harold Fruetel. I volunteered for the Army, joined at Fort Snelling February 11th, 1942. We were shipped up to Camp Forest, Tennessee, which was in the dead of winter, of course, and that was about 50 miles from Nashville. And we were there until I think about April, and then we were sent east to Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan to do guard duty at the Sioux Locks. And there was a Fort Brady, Michigan wasn't very large, so they couldn't house us all. They had a area about a mile out of town with they call them Quonset huts. About five guys could sleep in those things, and this area was known as Minneapolis Hill, and I never could find out how that area got to be called Minneapolis Hill. Well, then this was in the spring, and in the fall then we were shipped clear across to San Luis Obispo, California. And I was there for, let's see, from about, I think it was the 1st of January until into April, when we were shipped down to, at that time, Camp Rucker, Alabama, which is now Fort Rucker, Alabama. It was a brand new camp. There wasn't a spear of green grass anyplace. It was all brand new there. To back up to San Luis Obispo, California, I don't remember that there ever was a day or a night that it didn't rain. So we spent the summer there, then at what was then Camp Rucker, Alabama, and then I used to, my working history was with the U.S. Postal Service, so I ended up being one of about 6 guys that operated the postal system for the, at that time I was with the 35th Army Division. And to back up a little bit, when I was still not far from Nashville, the commander of the postal unit there, Walt Wagner, who I hear from every Christmas yet, would let some of us go along with the trucks into Nashville to pick up that mail. And somehow, I have no idea how this all came about, excuse me, but I got word of a federal, what they call the federal entrance examination, excuse me, which you could take for any job in the federal service. I thought, well, shoot, why not? All right, so we go back down to Camp Rucker and so on. And then the 35th Division, which I was in at that time, was slated to go overseas. And we were to leave from North Carolina. I do not remember the name of the port, but I do remember we were getting in line to board the ship when my name was called out as a result of this federal exam, entrance exam. My name was called out to take the test for the Air Corps there at Miami Beach. Excuse me.
Sure.
Which I did. Well, as a result, why, the 35th Division, which I had been a part of, had already taken off. Well, after I'd taken the exam and then was interviewed, the interviewer said, "Well, Harold," he said, "you did a great job on the test. There were three positions in the Air Corps that this was for, the pilot, bombardier, and navigator." And even got to see a tour of Miami Beach. Even got to see, that famous outlaw of those days had a nice new home there in Miami Beach. But anyway, then I was no longer with the 35th Division, and was shipped up to Camp Atterbury, Indiana, to join the 106th Infantry Division. We were then, and they were slated to go overseas, and they were so I don't think I was at Camp Atterbury more than a month or two. Well, it could have been a little more than that. But anyway, then we were sent up to Boston, and that's where the 106th left to go overseas. I don't remember the date that we left Boston, but we were the first ship, supposedly, that crossed the ocean at that time without any protection. They felt the German U-boats were done for. So we've made it across at, we were told, in record time, 6 days. And we landed at, what was that port now? I can't remember the port. It was the north part of England. And we ate our Thanksgiving dinner in the staging area in England. And then we were to cross the English Channel, and which had been won back by the Allies. And so I happened to be put on guard duty, I don't know why, on an LSM or an LST. I never knew the difference. But anyway, in the base of that smaller ship were tanks and trucks anchored down to be hauled onto the continent. And it was a real windy, stormy evening, and pretty soon, wham, bang, and that ship just vibrated, and that made them decide they turned around right away and went back to shore. Either a tank had broken loose down there, or it never got anchored properly. So then later in the day, then we started out again, and it got to be late in the day when we landed at Le Havre, and that's where we went inland by truck. The first night inland, we stayed in a castle, beautiful, wonderful French castle, but the terrazzo floors were not very soft. And so we had 2 nights going inland by truck, and the winter reportedly was, if not the worst, one of the worst on record of the European continent. Snow, there was snow, I think the way I remember it, a foot or 2 in the woods there, and somehow or other the Army, this for the second night, they located some straw, and they dumped piles of the straw around where we could put up our pup tents. And of course the pup tent was for 2 guys, but then we'd double up. So we'd have our 2 tents, fasten them together on that straw on top of the snow. And 4 people in there, why, it helped keep us a little bit warm. The only thing is, we had the so-called Army boots. What did they call them? Combat boots. I still have my pair, but they were not warm. We didn't have any overshoes at that time yet. And then we got to our destination, which was the small town of St. Vith, Belgium. And the 2nd Division Army Division was leaving St. Vith, and we were, the 106th was taking over at St. Vith, Belgium. But when our own General, Alan W. Jones, saw the area that we, the 106th, was supposed to defend, he went directly to Bradley, General Bradley, and said, "No way can we defend that area." And Bradley says, "Don't worry, nothing's going to happen." Well, and it's my understanding, a good friend of mine from Bemidj was in the 2nd Division, and I guess they got the same report from Ike up on the north end there when they were concerned about what might happen. Well, we know what happened. And our division at full strength, if I remember correctly, an Army division at full strength was about 16,000 troops. Well, we know what happened. The Germans attacked, and we, the 106th Division, suffered 12,000 casualties. Now, not all of those, I'm telling, I didn't get any reports of this, but some of those casualties, no doubt, were strictly weather beaten. For these poor guys that had to be out in foxholes, in that sub-zero temperature, in leather combat boots, I could see where they would become casualties. But anyway, there's 12,000 casualties reported out of a total of 16,000. So then we were...
What was this battle called? Is this the Battle of the Bulge you're talking about?
Battle of the Bulge,
right.
Yeah. And where that ran, I was there, but I'm not sure. It started way up north, and from what I have read, the Battle of the Bulge was about 85 miles long. But we were 12 miles north of Bastogne, Belgium, which my understanding was when we were there, that was what they call the south end of the bulge. But I have information that I've got otherwise that said it extended further south than that. So we were more towards the south end of that of the Battle of the Bulge area there. And one of the stories I might relate, the general, I don't think I ever knew his name, but our general at close to Bastogne there was asked by the Germans to surrender. And of course no general wants to do that if he can avoid it. And it happened that General Patton was on his way up from further south, and as I understand it, to give this general there near Bastogne some help. And it ended up that he didn't have to surrender to the Germans. But Christmas of 1944 then came. And this general, I don't know his name, I never did know his name, but reportedly he decided he wanted to mingle with his German prisoners of war. His aides weren't in favor of that. They were concerned about his safety. But reportedly he did that anyway. And when he left, reportedly, as he closed the door, he said, "Merry Christmas." And then reportedly again, the German POWs immediately responded, singing Silent Night in German. My own comment is, who is mad at who? And that was pretty much my experience over there, except we did get, then the war ended in May, and we were shipped into Germany to a small place called Bad M's, and I understand the bad was for bath. And I don't think I was there more than weeks. And under the point system, I already had enough points to return home. So, and I don't remember exactly when I left there, and I can't come up with the port I left from, but it was from France north of where we entered the continent before. And we traveled back. We landed in New York. We were riding in a small converted Italian ship, and we stayed overnight in New York and had a chance to even get a ride around the parts of New York City. And then we headed clear across the continent to camp in Colorado, Camp Carson, which is now Fort Carson. That too was a newly built camp during World War II there. And then that was, oh golly, it was getting towards fall, and I was hospitalized for a while there at what was then Camp Carson. It's now Fort Carson. And then in in September, I got a 30-day leave to come home. I grew up on a farm near a little town called McIntosh, 50 miles west of Bemidj. So I had 30 days leave, and my dear wife-to-be and I were married. But then I wasn't discharged yet, so I had to return to Camp Rucker. And I remember this so very well. I was riding the train back, and I arrived there early on the Sunday morning, which is a quiet time of the day, of course. And I got into this, well, it was a troop gathering place, whatever you want to call it there. And I didn't see anybody else in the place, but anyway, I went up to the gentleman that was working there, telling him my predicament, that I was a newlywed and I didn't have a place to live, and I was sent back before I would be discharged. And lo and behold, behind me, back in the corner of this room, the gentleman says, "We have a place for you." And talk about happy that I was. So then, of course, my wife came down there, and we were there until I got discharged in November. It was in November then, and I was discharged there at Camp Rucker from the U.S. Army, and came on home. We were married, and then we didn't have a place to live here, but we ended up here in Bemidji. It's a summer camp area, lots of lakes and so on, and in the winter it's kind of cool usually. So my dear wife and I ended up at a small cabin along Lake Bemidji in the dead of winter. And the fellow that ran this resort, it was called Short Crest Resort, he had a son who had served in the Army then and didn't survive. But his name was Harry Rose, a nice guy, and he had me come with him, and we'd go to sawmills and wherever we could find shavings and sawdust to bank up a summer cabin. And that, at best, that wasn't too good. But I then was taken back in to work in the post office. And this was just before Christmas, so that all fit in very well. But my dear wife, who was stuck in that cabin there, that wasn't so nice, except that those people, Mr. and Mrs. Rose, were kind enough to have her come down to their house and spend some time. We had a oil-burning heater in that cabin, but that thing would quit sometimes too.
Oh, that's not comfortable.
And so that's pretty much my story.
Well, I got a question to ask you. When you were in the Bulge, what was your job in the infantry?
Well, each division has a small unit that handles the mail for the division, and I was part of that.
Okay, so you didn't have to go up in the combat lines and so forth?
No,
Oh,
I
that's
was
good.
I was lucky. I was always behind the lines, you know.
Yeah, okay.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
And we had we met some people, and another interesting experience. This was an older lady, a Belgian lady. I don't know if she was never married or if she was a widow, but she invited me and 3 other of the workers, 4 of us, to spend Christmas Eve of December 1944 with her. And I do have pictures of her, of that when we were with her, but I haven't located them yet, no. Actually, my mother and this lady communicated by mail for some years afterwards, I suppose, until one of them maybe died or whatever. Yeah.
Well, Harold, it's been an honor to be here. I thank you for your time today.
Well, I appreciate your going to all this trouble.